I used to think the same way. I believed some of the biggest money myths out there, and they kept me stuck, wasting time and making poor financial choices. That's why in this video, we're going to break down the most common money myths that keep people poor, and more importantly, I'll show you how to shatter them fast so you can finally start building real wealth instead of chasing financial illusions. So many people fall into the trap of thinking that the only way to build wealth is to earn a massive paycheck, and this belief holds them back for years. The problem with this mindset is that it puts all the focus on income while completely ignoring the habits and strategies that actually make someone financially secure. People assume that once they get that promotion, land that higher paying job, or hit six figures, their money problems will magically disappear. But here's the reality. Without the discipline to manage money, without understanding how to save strategically, invest wisely, and avoid lifestyle inflation, even a high salary won't keep you out of financial trouble. You can find countless examples of people earning well into the 6 or 7 figures who are living paycheck to paycheck because their spending grows just as fast as their income. The truth is, the problem isn't always the size of the paycheck, it's the habits built around it. The solution is to shift the focus away from income alone and start learning how to manage, save, and multiply what you already have. Building wealth doesn't start when you hit a certain salary. It starts when you take control of the money currently flowing through your hands. That means creating a budget that works, tracking expenses so you actually know where your money goes, and making a commitment to pay yourself first by setting aside a portion of your income for savings and investments. It means avoiding lifestyle creep, where every increase in salary is followed by an increase in unnecessary spending. Instead, you lock in a percentage of your income to go toward wealth, building activities and investments, and you let compounding do the heavy lifting over time. Once this foundation is solid, even a modest income can start to generate wealth if it's managed properly. An example that makes this crystal clear is the story of two very different earners. Imagine person A, who makes $200,000 a year but spends $210,000 a year on cars, vacations, and an oversized mortgage. Despite the impressive income, they're drowning in debt and constantly stressed about money. Now compare that to person B, who earns $53,000 a year but lives on $40,000, saves $5,000, and invests $10,000 consistently every year. At first glance, person A looks wealthy, but in reality, person B is the one building long-term financial security. Over the years, person B's investments grow, compound, and start generating passive income, while person A is stuck on a treadmill of working harder to keep up with mounting bills. This example highlights that wealth has far less to do with the size of the paycheck and far more to do with the financial systems you put in place. A practical way to apply this is to start with the 50-30-20 rule, or any variation of a budgeting system that forces you to save and invest before you spend. If you take just 20% of your income and put it to work, whether that's in index funds, retirement accounts, or building up a side investment, you'll be shocked at how quickly momentum builds. Even if your income feels small right now, building these habits early is what creates the foundation for future wealth. High income is nice, but without these systems, it can vanish just as fast as it arrives. One of the biggest misconceptions about money is that saving alone will make you rich. This belief creates a false sense of security because people convince themselves that if they just cut enough coupons, skip enough coffees, or hoard enough cash in a savings account, eventually they will end up wealthy. The problem with this mindset is that while saving is essential, it cannot be the only step. Inflation quietly eats away at the value of money year after year, meaning that the dollars you save today will be worth less tomorrow. Relying solely on saving creates a situation where you may feel disciplined, but in reality, you are falling behind financially. For example, putting money in a traditional savings account may give you 1-2% interest at best, while inflation averages 3-4%. Over time, you are actually losing purchasing power by not putting that money to work. The solution lies in pairing disciplined saving with intentional investing. Saving gives you security and liquidity, but investing is what grows your money and allows you to get ahead of inflation. The key is to first build a solid emergency fund to cover unexpected expenses so you are not forced to dip into investments or take on high-interest debt when life throws surprises your way. After that safety net is in place, the focus should shift toward investments that create long-term growth. Index funds, exchange-traded funds, real estate, and even dividend-paying stocks are vehicles that allow your money to compound over time. Instead of just sitting in a bank account, your money begins to work for you, earning returns, building equity, and generating passive income. This is the real wealth building engine that saving alone cannot provide. An example of how this works can be seen when comparing two people who both save diligently but approach money differently. Imagine person A saves $500 a month and keeps it in a savings account for 30 years. At the end of those 30 years, they will have saved $180,000 and with interest, maybe around $230,000. Now, imagine person B also saves $500 a month but invests it into an index fund averaging 8% annual returns. After 30 years, person B's account has grown to over $745,000. The difference between the two outcomes isn't that one person worked harder than the other. It's that one understood the limits of saving and the power of investing. This example proves that saving alone, while disciplined, is not enough to create wealth. Money has to be put into assets that grow. A practical way to implement this is by creating an automated system that splits your income into both savings and investments. You might decide to save 10% of your income into a high-yield savings account for your emergency fund and short-term needs, and then direct another 50-20% toward investment accounts. Automating this process ensures consistency and takes the emotion out of financial decisions. By doing this, you create a balance where you are both safe in the short term and growing wealth in the long term. Saving provides the foundation, but investing is the accelerator. When these two work together, they protect you from financial setbacks while also giving you the opportunity to actually build wealth that lasts. A lot of people grow up hearing that all debt is bad, and as a result, they spend their entire lives trying to avoid it completely. This belief sounds safe on the surface, but in reality, it creates a problem because it prevents people from understanding the difference between bad debt and good debt. Bad debt is the kind that drains your income, like high-interest credit card balances or loans taken out to buy things that lose value the moment you purchase them. Carrying this kind of debt can trap you in a cycle of payments, fees, and stress that makes it difficult to ever get ahead. But when people lump all debt into the same category, they end up missing out on the potential that smart debt has to actually accelerate wealth building. Fear of debt leads many to shy away from opportunities, leaving them with only their earned income to rely on instead of leveraging other people's money to grow assets. The solution is to shift the mindset from all debt is dangerous to strategic debt can be a tool. The first step is learning how to separate the harmful forms of debt from the productive ones. Bad debt includes things like payday loans, maxed out credit cards, and financing luxury purchases that don't produce income. Good debt, on the other hand, is borrowing that allows you to acquire something that can generate value or cash flow over time. Mortgages for rental properties, business loans that fund growth, or student loans that lead to higher earning potential can all be examples of productive debt when managed wisely. The key is ensuring that the return on investment from taking on that debt exceeds the cost of borrowing it. This means paying attention to interest rates, repayment terms, and the potential for the debt to generate long-term benefits. An example that highlights this difference clearly is in real estate. Imagine two people each borrow $200,000. Person A takes out the loan to buy a luxury car, which immediately begins to depreciate in value the moment they drive it off the lot. Now they're stuck with monthly payments for something that doesn't add to their net worth and only costs them more over time. Person B, however, uses the same amount of borrowed money to purchase a rental property that generates $500 per month in rental income while their mortgage payment is $1,000. Not only is the debt being paid off by the tenants, but person B is also creating cash flow and building equity at the same time. Over the years, the property appreciates, and that initial debt has now turned into an asset worth far more than the original loan amount. The same dollar amount of debt had two very different outcomes depending on how it was used. Another practical example can be found in entrepreneurship. Many small business owners start out by taking on debt in the form of business loans or lines of credit. While this can be risky, if the borrowed money is used to expand operations, increase production, or improve marketing, it can result in profits that far exceed the cost of the loan. This is how many companies grow from small startups into large enterprises. Instead of avoiding debt completely, these entrepreneurs learn to make debt work for them. The lesson here is that debt itself is not inherently bad. It is the way it is managed and the purpose it serves that determines whether it hurts you or helps you. By using debt strategically, you give yourself access to opportunities that would be impossible if you relied only on your savings or earned income. When you understand the difference between destructive debt and productive debt, you gain the ability to use leverage to accelerate your financial growth rather than holding yourself back out of fear. Many people avoid investing in the stock market because they believe it is nothing more than gambling. And this belief keeps them from ever taking advantage of one of the most powerful wealth-building tools available. The problem with this mindset is that it confuses speculation with investing. Gambling relies on chance and luck, while investing, when done correctly, relies on research, discipline, and time. People who think the stock market is gambling often only hear stories about someone making or losing a fortune overnight, which usually involves day trading, chasing hot stocks, or following market hype. This fear creates paralysis, and as a result, many choose to leave their money in savings accounts, earning next to nothing, rather than putting it into assets that historically deliver strong long-term returns. By avoiding the market, they miss out on decades of potential growth and the compounding effect that turns small, consistent contributions into significant wealth. The solution is to reframe how you see the stock market and understand that true investing is not about quick wins, but about long-term strategy. Instead of trying to time the market or chase the next big stock, the focus should be on buying diversified, low-cost index funds or exchange-traded funds that mirror the overall performance of the market. Historically, the stock market has returned around 7–10% annually over long periods, and while there are ups and downs in the short term, the long-term trend has always been upward. This means that the longer you keep your money invested, the more likely you are to benefit from those steady gains. The strategy is simple: invest consistently, reinvest dividends, and let time do the heavy lifting. By treating investing as a disciplined, long-term plan instead of a gamble, you remove the risk of emotional decision making and allow compounding to work in your favor. An example that illustrates this is the difference between two approaches. Person A believes the stock market is gambling, so they keep $10,000 in a savings account earning 100% annually. After 30 years, that money grows to just about $13,500. Person B, however, takes the same $10,000 and invests it in a broad market index fund averaging 8% returns. After 30 years, Person B's money has grown to over $100,000. The difference is staggering, and it shows the power of long-term investing compared to playing it safe and keeping money out of the market. What looks like risk in the short term actually becomes security in the long term because the money grows at a rate that savings alone cannot match. Another powerful example can be seen during market downturns. When the stock market crashes, many people panic and sell their investments, thinking they are avoiding losses. But history shows that those who stay invested almost always come out ahead when the market recovers. Take the 2008 financial crisis, for instance. Investors who pulled their money out locked in their losses, while those who stayed the course not only recovered their investments but saw massive growth over the following decade as the market reached record highs. This demonstrates that gambling is about reacting emotionally to wins and losses, while true investing is about patience, consistency, and trust in the long-term growth of the economy. The lesson here is clear: the stock market is not a casino when you approach it with discipline and knowledge. By avoiding speculation and instead focusing on long-term investing strategies, you turn the market into a reliable vehicle for wealth creation. The fear of it being gambling only holds you back from opportunities that have historically built fortunes for ordinary people who stayed patient and consistent. One of the most damaging money myths people believe is that investing is something you should wait to do until you are older and more financially stable. This belief feels safe because it makes people think they are protecting themselves from risk, but in reality, it creates a major problem by stealing away the single most powerful advantage investors have: time. The earlier you start, the more time your money has to grow through compound interest, and waiting even a few years can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars in missed growth. Many people convince themselves they need to first earn more money, pay off every debt, or wait until they feel financially ready. But by the time they finally start, they have lost years of compounding that they can never get back. The myth that investing is something to put off for later traps people into being lifelong savers rather than wealth builders. The solution is to flip the perspective and realize that the best time to invest is always as early as possible, even if you can only start with small amounts. Beginning early allows compound interest to do the heavy lifting, turning small, consistent contributions into massive gains over decades. The principle is simple: the longer your money is invested, the more time it has to grow, not just on the original amount, but also on the growth it produces along the way. This snowball effect is what makes starting young so powerful. Even investing modest amounts can have extraordinary results when given enough time. Waiting until you are older, even if you invest larger sums, often cannot catch up to what small amounts invested earlier can achieve. The key is consistency, discipline, and understanding that time is the greatest multiplier of wealth. An example that perfectly illustrates this is the comparison between two investors. Imagine investor A starts investing $200 a month at the age of 22 and continues doing so until they are 30, then stops completely. They invested for only 8 years, putting in a total of $19,200, but they let the money sit and grow in an account averaging 8% annual returns. By the time investor A reaches 60, their account has grown to more than $430,000. Now, investor B waits until age 30 to start investing, contributing $200 a month consistently until they are 60. They invest for 30 years, putting in a total of $72,000, but by age 60, their account has grown only around $2 to $70,000. Even though investor B contributed nearly 4 times as much money, they still ended up with less wealth than investor A, who started earlier and allowed compounding to work in their favor. This example proves that time in the market always beats timing the market, and that waiting is the real risk. Another example can be seen with retirement accounts. Someone who begins investing in their 20s, even with just small contributions to a 401k or IR, sets themselves up for a much more secure retirement than someone who waits until their 40s or 50s to start. Even if the later starter puts in much higher contributions, the growth from compounding is simply not enough to catch up with the decades of lost time. This is why financial advisors consistently stress starting early, no matter how small the contributions may seem. The takeaway is that believing you should wait until you are older to invest is a myth that robs you of your greatest asset, time. The sooner you begin, the more your money works for you, and the less you ultimately have to contribute yourself. By starting early and staying consistent, you give compounding the years it needs to transform small amounts into real wealth. And that advantage is something you can never regain if you wait too long. Many people hold on to the belief that rich people are just lucky, and this mindset creates a major problem because it removes personal responsibility from the equation. When you believe that wealth comes only from luck, inheritance, or being in the right place at the right time, you give yourself permission to do nothing. You convince yourself that success is out of your control, so why bother trying? This belief keeps people stuck in the same financial rut, waiting for a windfall that never comes, while dismissing the real habits and choices that lead to wealth. By attributing success to luck alone, people blind themselves to the discipline, sacrifice, and consistency required to achieve financial independence. This victim mindset doesn't just hold people back, it actively discourages them from learning the skills and developing the habits that actually create long-term success. The solution is to replace the idea of luck with the understanding that wealth is built through repeated actions, knowledge, and intentional decision-making. While external factors may play a role in opportunities, what really determines whether someone becomes wealthy is how they respond to those opportunities and how they manage their resources. Rich people often follow consistent practices such as living below their means, investing early and often, building multiple streams of income, and continuously educating themselves. These are not the results of luck, but the results of discipline and strategy applied over years. By shifting your mindset to see wealth as something you can actively build through your choices, you move from feeling powerless to feeling empowered. Instead of waiting for good fortune, you start taking deliberate steps toward financial independence, and over time those steps compound into real results. An example of this can be seen in the story of someone who starts with very little but builds wealth through consistent effort. Take the case of a teacher earning an average income. If they believe wealth is only about luck, they will spend their paycheck freely, assuming financial independence is out of reach. But if they commit to saving a portion of their income, investing consistently in index funds, and avoiding lifestyle inflation, over the course of 20-30 years, they can become a millionaire, even without a massive salary. The difference is not luck, it is the accumulation of small, intentional financial decisions made consistently. This demonstrates that the path to wealth is accessible to ordinary people who are willing to take responsibility for their financial choices. Another example comes from entrepreneurs who are often labeled as lucky when their businesses succeed. What people don't see are the countless hours spent researching, planning, testing, and failing before finding what works. They don't see the risks taken, the sacrifices made, or the discipline required to reinvest profits instead of spending them. When a successful business finally takes off, outsiders call it luck, but insiders know it was built on persistence and strategy. This highlights the difference between the illusion of luck and the reality of hard work and disciplined choices. The truth is, attributing wealth solely to luck is an easy excuse that keeps people from taking action, while in reality, financial success is built by those who take ownership of their habits, decisions, and mindset. Wealth is rarely the result of chance, it is almost always the result of consistency, discipline, and the willingness to do what most people won't. When you replace the myth of luck with the reality of responsibility, you unlock the path to building wealth yourself. First, you don't need a massive income to build wealth. It's about how you manage and grow what you already earn. Second, saving alone won't make you rich. You need to invest to beat inflation and let your money multiply. Third, not all debt is bad. Strategic debt can be leveraged to build assets and cash flow. Fourth, the stock market isn't gambling. When you invest long-term with discipline, it becomes one of the most reliable paths to wealth. Fifth, waiting until you're older to invest is a costly mistake. Time in the market always beats timing the market. And sixth, wealth is not about luck. It's built through discipline, strategy, and consistent action over time. If you found this valuable, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and drop a comment with the money myth you've believed in the past.